Okay, so I got a question here now. One of the things that attracted me to Dan's original Twitter thread that kind of blew him up online and sparked this conversation and got our attention was the fact that he made a point that nobody's a prophet in their own land, and that part of the glory and the esoteric interest in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and part of the reason why sometimes it's not taken seriously by North Americans is because it's a North American religion, for lack of a better term, at least in its origin from Joseph Smith as a farm boy from Vermont / New York, right? So I love this idea that things can be hidden just in the wide open, and that obviousness actually kind of keeps them sacred and hidden and almost Gnostic. You know what I'm saying? Just because they're so obvious. So I got a question for you about artifacts. We oftentimes, in our arrogance as modern people, think that magical artifacts, if they're real, they're relegated to the far history. You know what I'm saying? Because for some reason we can believe in a materialistic and physical actual artifact as long as it's 2,000-year-old Shroud of Turin or something like that, right? We don't believe that it could be 1850s coffin cane or 1840s spectacles, breastplate, Urim and Thummim, right? What are your opinions on things like Sword of Laban, the Liahona, coffin canes? Heber C. Kimball made a very famous talk after Joseph Smith had been murdered, where he actually talked about how in the last days we need to take the healing artifacts of the church seriously, and actually referenced artifacts that will heal people in the last days when all of these plagues and these battles and all of these calamities that have been foretold and prophesied by prophets both old and modern, when those all come into fruition and they're happening, that there will be artifacts of the church that are actually being used similar to the way the ancients used artifacts like the Ark of the Covenant even to go into battle and so on and so forth. So hit me with some artifact wisdom, brother.
It's possible, because in terms of like good, being aware of this, it's something that we haven't really thought much about, because it's very taboo to really mix the spiritual with the physical. Like, in polite Western society, we're like, okay, we have to make sure, especially in the Protestant belief system, it's like, okay, it's just spiritual. We're not going to focus on anything physical. All other religions are okay mixing the spiritual with the physical, whether it be Catholicism or, Eastern religions. And one of the other great points, though, is evil that's out there is definitely aware that there can be physical, spiritual like artifacts. The Nazis were obsessed with trying to find these ancient artifacts that would give them, this evil mystical power.
Yeah.
That's not disputed. That's indisputable. Like, for a fact, the Nazis were interested in going to Tibet, going to Egypt, going to South America to find these interesting spiritual artifacts. So if evil takes that seriously, I think it's, probably it should be a good thing that, on the light side, we should be able to take that seriously as well.
That's a really good point, Dan. I like that a lot.
Okay, well, so now that we're taking it all seriously, what do you come up with? Do you come up with like, I've always kind of wondered, okay, why was the Sword and Laban in there? Was it just to like show off?
Joseph Smith used it to kill all the werewolves.
That one is there. That one's true. That's true. Well, Liahona, Urim and Thummim, coffin canes. You know what I'm saying? Do you think maybe they're just in that vault, the granite vault, and church still has them, like the Urim and Thummim? I've heard every conspiracy theory out there. And I don't even like using the word conspiracy theory anymore, because it's kind of got a pejorative tinge to it. And the truth is, all a conspiracy theory is an unproven theory that'll be proven true in 18 months. So, hopefully the Urim and Thummim conspiracy theory is true. But apparently, where are a lot of these artifacts now? Like, I've heard everything. The Urim and Thummim was supposedly taken up by God again when he returned the plates. Was it or was it not?
It looks like it probably was. So you don't really have Joseph using the breastplate and Urim and Thummim much beyond losing the first 116 pages. that's when he starts going more into the brown stone in the hat, and maybe even using the white stone that he had. Because remember, he had like a bunch of seer stones.
Okay, because I was about to say a lot of these things like seer stones or Urim and Thummim or even the Book of Ephraim that supposedly wasn't finished translating while the rest of the Book of Abraham was finished translating. Like supposedly, a lot of these things were seen in the Nauvoo temple when it was like originally burning down and the people were fleeing. But the last person that saw it in the temple wasn't last person to leave the temple. So it was either burned and destroyed in the temple or else they actually still have it and it's a hidden relic and it's in that vault underneath the granite mountain. And, I've heard all kinds of cool stuff like that. I think the coffin canes have already come back and are doing their magic secretly and will be used in a widespread way during the millennium. But some of these others, I'm like, okay, like when are we getting a hold of the Sword of Latum again? And
Everybody wants the sword.
Are you sure it made it back? Because Weta Workshop made their copy for the movie. You know what I'm saying? And it looked pretty BA. And all the revelations say the battle's going to be pretty awesome. And if they got guns, but we got the Sword of Laban, I think we're going to be okay. No.
So isn't the brown seer stone, I don't know if you guys have seen anything about this, that it's the actual type of stone that it is?
A Genesis stone, yeah.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like some crazy, like rare stone that comes from like the earliest ages of the earth or something like that. Do you know?
Well, we've got the resident expert here, Dan.
Yeah, Dan, do you know anything about the...
I have not heard anything about that, but I used to be, really interested in geology and rocks for a quick minute. So there's a good likelihood that it's connected to, it's possible there were other eras or other geological eras that were much more recent. So if it is as old as the Earth, if it is, for example, 4.6 billion years old or however old the Earth is, which, at the end of the day, I don't know if we really have any idea, then it would be spiritually connected that way. It would have that kind of, mystical feminine quality that's able to pierce things in almost like the same way as the Oracle of Delphi. So
somebody I don't know. It's just one of those things, like if you guys, people that are listening, to like look that up. There's something, I remember seeing something about it.
We have it.
Oh, you do?
We have it. It's a
banded jasper.
Banded jasper stone. It was gobbled up by a dinosaur and spat out.
Okay, yeah. And they're like
chickens,
crazy
Wait,
rare.
but I thought you just said dinosaurs weren't real, dog. And now you're saying
I'm
it's
just
a banded
saying what
jasper
our
stone.
actual fact checker told us. No, I don't believe in the fake dinosaur news. But apparently, maybe one existed, and Joe Smith used a dinosaur rock.
But
which is
regardless,
very
it's a
cool.
crazy rare stone. So the fact that Joseph, even just the fact that he had one of those stones, I think is something that at least we should take note of, is like, whoa, that's gnarly. All the rest of the stuff, I don't know, but
look,
yeah,
you're making even Dan scowl. Like you're even making him think like, what?
And for more info on seer stones, you should just look up Mark Ashurst McGee's a seer stone thesis that he wrote. I was looking through this the other day, and he actually talks a lot about how even the brown seer stone that Joseph was using was kind of inferior to the white seer stone that he found, in that he could use that one more to see things in the future, but couldn't, like with the brown seer stone, he was only really able to like find things.
You know where there's actually physical precedent for that in history?
Where?
We still have radio stations to this day that broadcast through crystals.
Really?
Yeah, it used to be that in the early days, see, I have my ham radio license, right? I can actually build a 50-foot tower at my house that's protected by FCC law, and no municipality is allowed to say no because of my class of ham radio license. I actually have my own radio station in my backyard. So it besides doing FM 98.1 and other radio hits and things like that, I also actually have my own license for my own radio station. And it's pretty rad because like you can put like a guest house at the top of one of these 50-foot towers, and like it's like freaking hilarious.
That's awesome.
But anyway, in the process of being ham radio certified, you meet a lot of old school. We're talking old school radio engineers, guys that served in the Korean War, guys that learned during World War II days how radios work and so on and so forth. And look this up on YouTube. It's amazing. With razor blades and wires in the trenches, World War II veterans would actually make AM radios just out of those random
What?
parts.
Oh, interesting.
And some of the oldest radios, you would actually have to procure crystals where the electrical currents would run a certain way through a certain crystal in order to emit the bandwidth necessary for a certain frequency to transmit.
Oh, interesting.
And so, yeah, like there's precedent for the use of geological entities in order to emit certain frequencies that humans desire to communicate through. And so, just as Dan said before, that you said Isaac Asimov said that any technology advanced enough that we don't really understand it is indecipherable from magic. There's no reason that like you couldn't see a seer stone where it's like, okay, the brown one I use to see the future, the black one I use to see the past, the green one
iPhone versus Android.
even better. But you're not an Android guy,
radio's
are ya?
magic to me still.
But you're not an Android guy,
Radio's
are
still magic. I'm just like, how the heck are people just? And they had it like in like the 30s, and people were talking on the radio, and like, how the heck did they do that? Radio's magic.
It's all frequency.
Tesla, figured it out in the late, 19th century.
It's crazy.
And the thing that I find actually really cool about radio specifically and the conversations around faith and believing in things that you can't see is like those radio waves have always been around. And people like walked around forever without knowing about those things.
Did they?
Right?
But
maybe not. Yeah, maybe they accessed them in a different way. And so like I think that's a really intriguing thing for us to remember is that like, hey, look, there is so much that we could be ignorant of. Like just because we can now access those radio waves, that doesn't mean that there are other frequencies that we can't tap into yet, and we just don't have the tech to do it. And maybe some of these people that Dan's talking about had something in that way.
So are we going down the full transhumanism route here to where what we're actually talking about is that the things in the gospel are really just descriptions of technologies that eventually will grant us eternal life and things like that? That's kind of what the transhumanists
I don't
say.
think so.
I don't either.
Not
but,
in like a
but that's where they
bionic
run.
way. Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm not a fan of that, but I do think there's something to new ages. And when those astrologers talk about how humanity enters a new age, like during Christ's lifetime, that was the age of Pisces.
Yep.
We entered the age of Aquarius. I do think there's something to new technology for new ages, and I think it's bizarre that the more ancient you read, the more futuristic it starts to sound.
Yeah.
Okay. My mind is blown here, and unfortunately, we're making good on a promise to Dan that we're going to get him out of here before our heart out and stuff like that. So we're actually going to let him get the last word here. Dan, what do people need to know? What do people need to know before you sign out and you say goodbye and everything about everything we've talked about here? What do they got to know, brother? You tell me.
People need to know that before the flood, the world was a completely different place. There is such a thing as spiritual technology. The world is made up of energy. There have been a number of different technologies over time where gradually, yes, the further back you go in time, the more advanced the technology gets. And by the time of, the Book of Mormon, what they're trying to do is they're trying to replicate and they're trying to hold on to traces of technology that existed before. In the early days of the Book of Mormon, they had stronger, better technology than they did later on. So Nephi had access to better technology, like the Sword of Laban. Like early on in Mesoamerica, they had stronger steel and stronger metal technology than they would have later on by the time of, Mormon and Moroni. The Bronze Age, it's harder to make bronze than iron. So, the Bronze Age was actually technologically further ahead than the Iron Age. And up and through the Middle Ages, they actually knew that through cycles of time, like in the past, that was the Golden Age. Then there was a Silver Age. So now there's been a huge change in the last 500 years where things have reversed. And now we're actually figuring out how things work energetically. And now, believe it or not, we live in a post-materialist age. We're back in the energetic age. We're back in the age of, spiritual machines.
Dude, I'm digging it. Where can people find you, bro? Where can people find you?
Great. So there's my Twitter, which is Speedbreed Dan. There's also my Substack, which is the McKindog Express. And you could reach me there.
All right.
Awesome.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming. And I I feel like I need to just go hang out in a library right now, or these dark ends of the internet that Kwaku keeps talking about. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. This is Midnight Mormons. We'll see you guys in the next program.